All right. So thanks for joining us. So I don't think I met everyone on here. So I'm Erin Postumus. I'm the outreach coordinator for the National Phonology Network. And I've been with the network a long time now, about 12, I think going on 12 years. So I'm glad to be chatting with you all today and to meet some new faces. So the purpose of these calls is to really just give you guys a chance to ask us questions, if you have anything or any concerns, or even any resources that you need or anything like that. It's kind of our chance to chat with you guys in a group and just hear from you all about your needs. And we do have monthly call topics just to kind of give us something to focus on and to give people an idea of whether there might be something that's super relevant for them. So today we are focusing on just an observation deck refresher because some people asked for that last time. And basically it's just going over all the stuff that's on the observation deck that's relevant for local phonology leaders and showing you some of the stuff that allows you to access information about your group members, and just some visualization tools and stuff that we have on there. But before we jump into that, we always like to get started with just quick introductions of everybody. And then if you want to share something about your local phonology program, maybe a recent success or something that's happened, feel free to do that as well. So does anyone want to go first?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Spinney. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm with the Vermont Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. And I went through the Local Phenology Leader certification course this spring and successfully graduated. And we are hoping to create a local phonology program starting this fall. So we got a large grant through the Forest Service, which takes effect 9/1. And so we'll be able to get the gears rolling, but we've got all, I wouldn't say all, but most of our ducks in a row, thanks to going through the certification course. And we're just getting excited to get things started.
That's awesome. We're really excited for you guys to start as well. And so awesome that you had funding for that too. It's, I think, rare sometimes that the local phonology programs get funding. So it's really exciting that you guys have that. Who wants to go next?
Hi, I'm Lena Swislocki. My pronouns are also she, her, and I wanted to go next because I work with Elizabeth. And I did not go through the certification that she did. So I'm excited this is sort of my first foray into this observation deck. And as part of getting our ducks in a row for September 1st, I would like to know how it works. So thank you for hosting this. And that's that. I also have a dog who you may hear barking in the background from time to time.
I do too. So, oh, cute. We'll just have a bunch of dogs barking. Well, welcome. I'm glad that you're joining us. Then Heidi?
Yes, hi. I am Heidi Bach. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm with the Columbia Land Conservancy in the Hudson Valley of New York. And I went through the certification training in the fall of 2019, I think. I'm pretty sure. Yes. And then was planning to get it really going in early 2020. And so we know what happened. And so I've been slowly plugging along. We went out, we definitely had a lapse in our sort of planning process, and we had staff turnover as part of that also. And so we went out this past winter and identified a bunch of trees. And I'd say about half of the maples that we identified as either sugar or red are actually Norway. So we are going through the process again now. The leaves are out in properly identifying them. And I'm hoping this winter to start recruiting volunteers and doing a training in the spring. And I have, support from the organization, and I've already started talking to some volunteers, but yeah, so I'm just trying to get my head back in the phenology game, and this call definitely spoke to me. I was like, oh yes, I need a refresher on all of this stuff. So so here I am.
Nice. Yeah, it often takes a couple years to get programs up and running. There's always setbacks and things like that where you realize, oh, the species are not right. So no worries there. Yeah, that kind of stuff always happens. We always say it takes a couple years to really get your program going. So any questions or anything before we get started? Things that you guys want to talk about to make sure that I leave time other than the observation deck refresher?
Well, I guess selfishly, changing out, and I think I might have emailed you about when you have identified something incorrectly, getting it out of your system. And
sure. Yeah, we can definitely go over that. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll talk about the process for whether if you've entered data on plants, then there's one way to do it. If you haven't and you just want to change the species, there's another way. So yeah, okay. We can definitely go over that. Anything else? All right. So before I share my screen, I first wanted to just kind of get your perspective on what do you feel like the purpose of the observation deck is, and like what have you done on the observation deck so far? So does anyone want to share just generally? And I have a kind of an ulterior motive of asking that because we are working on a website redesign right now. So we're going to be keeping all the components of the observation deck, just kind of moving things around a little bit. So I just wanted to hear from your perspective, like what have you done on the observation deck? What do you feel like is like the reason why you would go there, and what have you used it for, if you have? Maybe you're all kind of on the side where you haven't done too much there yet, but
I definitely haven't done too much there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you all have accounts, right? You've set up a Nature's Notebook account? No, you haven't. Okay. Okay, so you probably have logged in at least and like seen the observation deck and maybe added some sites and plants and animals, but not much else.
Yeah, I definitely, we have a site identified and I have put in plants and, but yeah, definitely haven't utilized it.
Okay. All right, I will share my screen.
Yeah, and I guess for me, like we utilized it during the certification course, but it's been a few months since I spent any significant amount of time on it. So I was excited to see that was the topic for the day, especially as we're starting to thinking about it, and I have to start thinking about how to teach others about it again.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of curious about whether you thought of the observation deck as like that's the place I go to set up my sites, or if that's the place I go to access like the learning observer certification course, or I look at my phonology calendar on there. I just didn't know if you guys had thoughts on that, but it sounds like most people have used it for the plant animal site setup stuff, which makes sense. All right. So hopefully you can see my screen. So the observation deck, it has a lot of things on it, as you probably have seen. So we have the section at the top, actually, I think this sometimes people kind of just like overlook it a little bit because a lot of the stuff that you do with your sites and your plants and animals is here at the bottom. But I wanted to start up here just because we do have some pretty relevant things at the top. So the first tab here, learning, that is where our observer certification course lives. So you can get to this just by going to learning.usa-NPN.org. But this is just a way to see how many of the modules you've already taken as part of the course. Currently, we have the How to Observe module is really the general overview of what phonology is, what Nature's Notebook is, and basically how do you set up a site and add plants and animals and enter data. So it's just the basics. This is the content that's also in our How to Observe handbook, which is a PDF that you can download, and that's also linked within the course. So as a local phonology leader, it's nice to encourage your observers to take the course, at least the module 1, because it does provide just some of the basics on making observations. And it has some tips on, especially if they're using the online interface to enter data, What does that look like? And how can you edit an observation if you need to? So it goes over all of that. And there are some videos that are linked in the course that are also helpful, they also live on our YouTube channel that go through each of those steps. And then module 2 is specifically about the mobile app. So we have some observers that just use the mobile app. We've actually updated the app in the last year to try to make it easier to do everything on the app, really. So really an observer could not ever have to go into their observation deck and do everything on the app. You can set up your account there. You can join a group or a local phonology program on there. You can add different plants and animals and then enter your observations and even review and edit your observations on the app now. So that module goes through how to do all of that stuff. We're actually working on module 3. We're just about to release that probably next week. And that module is going to be really more intensive on the plant and animal phenophases. So it'll describe what are all the phenophases, what do they look like for the plant functional groups like evergreens versus broadleaf trees and deciduous trees and forbs. And it'll go through the leaves, flowers, and fruit phenophases and what those look like, and like tips on how to capture, the beginning and the end of those phases, and then a little bit on the animal phenophases as well. And then we have a couple other modules in the works, and then the module 7 on here is kind of a practice where it has you look at photographs and then answer questions about what you see. So it kind of allows you to test your skills. So any questions on that on the learning tab? So the second one here is something that a lot of people don't even know is on here, but we added on a phonology calendar that's right on your observation deck. And it looks a little bit different than the phonology calendar we have in the biz school. So what this is it's a way to see your own data that you've collected or the data of any local phonology program that you belong to. And so the reason why we added this on here was we wanted to give observers kind of a cue that they can look at to both see when they might expect phenophases to be happening. So maybe there's something that they really want to pay attention to. You can only have 3 rows on here of 3 different, it's a site, plant, or animal and phenophase combination. So only 3, but you can pick some so you can kind of anticipate based on what happened last year when you might expect to see something happening to kind of give you a heads up and allow you to know to anticipate when that might be happening. And then the other reason is it allows observers to see if they might need to correct data. So if they had something like here where these are yes records here, the little colored lines, and maybe they look at this and they realize, oh, that might have been too early. I didn't really, I didn't see those monarchs that early in the year. I need to go back and edit that and change those yeses to nos. So those are the 2 reasons we have them on here. And the customize my calendar, this is a button that takes you to another interface where you can actually go in and choose which ones you want to see on here. So this is a drop down kind of like on the observation deck where you can change between your personal sites and then all the different local phonology programs that you're part of. So you pick out a local phonology program from the list. So I think I picked out a Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge group, and then you pick a site. So I picked the Bloomington site, and then you can pick from the list of species. I think I picked common milkweed. So we can look at leaves or open flowers, whatever we want, and then add to calendar. And then you would do the same thing if you want to add another one. And then you can add animals as well. So you could add adult monarch butterflies. And then you can change the years here. I'm going to keep them as the last 2 and then create. And so you can see like maybe I have some information here, but I didn't actually record open flowers for milkweed for whatever reason. So maybe I want to take that off and pick something else to look at. So I could change it to wild bergamot and open flowers. Maybe I add that on there, press the create button again. And so now I have a few things I can look at, and maybe I like that. So I'm going to make that my default calendar, or you can clear it and start over. If you make it the default, then you can go back onto your observation deck, and that's the one you'll see. Question? Okay.
There we go. I just can't remember, is this something where this kind of data visualization is only possible when you've got multiple years of data, or is it something that we could look at with the first year's data set, as like look at past months?
Sure, yeah, you can look at just this year. I think it has to have 2 years. So you could just, if you didn't have anything from last year, it would just be blank. And so you just have the one row on here for the gray one for 2021. Or you could, I guess you can make both of them 2021, but then it would show up as like the same thing twice. So I would probably just do like a year where they wouldn't have anything, maybe like see how it looks. So then you just get the 1 year. If you like the orange better, you could do 2021 here and then like that. Any other questions? All right.
Actually, Erin, yeah, I do have a question. Is this the data that you're seeing is anybody who's collected that data, or is it only your data?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it depends. If it's your personal site, then it's only your data. If it's the local phonology program, it's going to show all the data.
Okay, cool.
So it's kind of often people that are part of a local phonology program will ask, well, I want to see what anyone in my group has reported so that I can, get a sense of not just for my own data, but when something might be happening this year or what someone said last year. That's a way to do that and see it all at once. And one other thing I'll say about this, another reason why it's different from the Phonology Calendar on the visualization tool is you'll see it's a solid bar instead of, you might have seen on the visualization tool, it's a bunch of single lines where each day has a line. We decided we're trying to make it just simple and show basically the first yes to the last yes is going to be filled in. So this is just showing like the period of activity. So it's a solid bar, and you can see on that the pop-up there, the first yes and last yes, and then how many yeses are in there. So this is just trying to make it more visually simple than the visualization tool, but it's not as much detail. So if you wanted to really see like all the time someone said yes and whether there were no reports, before the first yes and after the last yes, then the visualization tool is better for that. And we can go over that as well.
Can you have the various rows on a calendar be by site? So like if you were the LPL for a project that had like 3 sites, and then you wanted to, instead of for the data for one particular species, you wanted to compare across sites, you could set that up in the Pheno calendar, right?
You can, yeah. And this is actually the only place you can do that. So we can't do that in the bigger visualization tool. So that's kind of a benefit of looking at this one. Yeah. Yeah, so you would just go to when you went to customize, you would pick out, I don't know, say like one from here, and then go here and pick out one of these. And so you can see they show up as the different site names. You could even go to it, probably pick out a different group as well if you wanted to like pick something else and add it on here. I don't know why you'd want to compare these two things, but yeah, just stick a couple different phonology programs on here at once. Okay, any other questions? Those are great questions. So the last tab is badges. Were you guys familiar with the badges? It's kind of hidden on here, but these are they're virtual badges that you earn for making different amounts of observations around different species. So we have a badge for each of the Nature's Notebook campaigns that you can join. So this one is flowers for bats, nectar connectors. That's something that's relevant for you all in the Northeast. And then also, this is a badge for just participating in one of the local phonology programs. And then there's also badges for different amounts of observations. So I think there's one that should be at the end, like your first observation that you ever make. If you enter negative data, we're trying to encourage people to report the no's. This is if you do a no, yes, and a no. So kind of the full life cycle of one of the pheno phases. And there are a bunch on here. And then there's annual badges for different years that you participate. So, and if you haven't earned a badge yet, it shows up at the end here and it tells you what you need to do to earn that badge. So it's kind of nice to offer that or tell your observers about it, as kind of an incentive for observing as well. And if you ever want to use, I've had people request the image files of these to use for different things, like to recognize observers. And we're happy to share those if you ever want to just email me and I can send them to you. They're very pretty. They're made by our graphic designer that we contract with, Terry Moody. She's very talented. All right, any questions about anything up here before I move on? So one other thing, or a couple things I guess I'll mention up here before we go down into the site panel. This is a way to get into looking at your account details. So if someone ever wants to change their password or anything else to manage their account, you would do that in here. So if that needs to happen, I would recommend you point the observers there. And then we also have this reminders to observe, which is just a weekly email that arrives on Wednesdays. And it's just it doesn't have any detail in it. You can't really change it so that it's more specific, but it just says, this is your weekly reminder to observe. And some people like it just to kind of give them a reminder. So that's there. I just wanted to check the chat. Okay, someone in my cohort made a video tutorial. Oh, that's awesome. Cool, I would love to share that. Yeah, I'll look for that video because we do have videos created by our partners section on our YouTube channel. So that would be great to add there. And yes, badges are fine. All right, so down here at the bottom, this is really probably where you would spend most of your time when you're on the observation deck. So one thing that I think is kind of tricky sometimes is under sites, this button here, this is actually a drop-down menu. And if you have a local phonology program name that's long, this doesn't look like a drop-down menu anymore. So sometimes observers get confused about this. So if you ever have someone who says, all I can see is my personal sites and I don't know how to see your local phonology program sites, just point them to this and make sure they know to click on that because they can change that from their personal sites to their local phonology program sites. And so your observers probably would never need to go to this edit site, or they wouldn't be able to for your sites, but you as a administrator for your local phonology program will be able to see this link here. And so the thing that I would recommend looking at on this page, if you haven't done this yet, is for any sites that you have, there's a whole section down here that some people don't know about that's more details about your site. And this is considered like the metadata about your site. But this could be really helpful, especially for data end users, to kind of get a sense of what your site looks like. And especially if you are observing animals at your site, I think it's helpful to know how big your site is. Because if you're doing like an area search and you're saying, you know, I'm counting all the birds of this species, it really depends on how big the site is. So as many of these details you can fill in, the better. That will really help to kind of give the most complete information about your observation location. So you can just go through these and there's more information with these little question marks here. So this is overall details about your site. And then we do have some more information that you can enter for plants in particular. That's things like what kind of forest type it is. For animals, we're really interested in whether you're kind of bringing in animals by artificial methods like feeders or anything like that. Any questions about that? All right.
I'm just sort of following along, logged into my account, and the project I had set up, the edit site is grayed out.
Okay, so that usually means
So
that you're not an administrator for that group. So we can look into that.
Okay, I'll send you an email.
Okay, yeah, if you're an administrator, then you should have access to all of those links. All right. So let's see. And then the button here to add a new site is pretty self-explanatory. So this is a very useful page that I always want to make sure that local phonology leaders know about. It's called the Manage Users page. So let's look at an example here. So the reason why you would go to this page is to see who is a member of your group. So it actually gives you a full list of all of the emails of everyone who's part of your local phonology program. This is where you can remove any observers. We occasionally get bots that have random accounts in here that get into groups. We haven't had that happen in a while, but you might see, I don't know, something, maybe this is one, I'm not sure. Oh no, that looks like it's a real person. But it could be, something that looks kind of funny with a whole bunch of numbers or something in the email. So you can use this button if you need to remove anyone, or maybe someone moved away and you don't want them to have access to your group anymore. Click this button here. So the way it works is when someone signs up for a Nature's Notebook account, they can join any local phonology program that they want. We just have it kind of open in that way. Usually people don't, unless they know that they're part of it, but some people think like, oh, that sounds interesting, I'm going to sign up for those things. And they don't realize that means they're supposed to be contributing data. So if you want to get rid of anyone who shouldn't be in there, that's the place to do it here. So you can also designate group members as either admins or data entry technicians on this page. So you click on their name, then you get some information about their observer ID, which we'll talk about, that's really useful, when they registered, and then you can download any observations they've made towards your program here. So you get a file that has just their data, and maybe you want to do that because you're concerned that maybe they made an error, or that you just want to see how much data they've reported to give them, some acknowledgement or something. So I think I was the original person who set up this group. So it doesn't have a box next to my name for admin, but anyone else would have 2 boxes here. So the group admin, that's what you all probably are for your local phonology programs. That's the person who is able to set up sites. They're able to access this manage users page, and then they're able to add the plants and animals, and they're able to delete all those things as well. So the other role that we have is the data entry technician. So that person is, they're not able to do those things that the group admin does. They can't access this page. They can't create sites. They can't add plants and animals or delete them. But what they can do is they can enter data on behalf of another member of the group. And so I will show you what that means in a minute. But basically, if you want someone to be able to do both of those things, you need to check both boxes. So then they're able to see this page, add plants and animals and sites, and then also add data or edit data on behalf of other members. If it's only a group admin, then you just have that. If you don't want them to be an admin, you just want them to be a data entry technician, then you just check this box. So, and I'll show you what it means to enter data on behalf of another member when we go into the enter observation screen. But any questions about that? Mm-hmm.
Why would you not want someone to be able to enter their own data?
So they can enter their own data, but this is like an added benefit of, say you have a program where there's some people who are not as comfortable with computers and they don't want to have to deal with that. You can say, okay, I don't want like Susie to enter data for everyone in her own account, because then it looks like she made all these observations, and it's better from a data quality perspective if we can track observations back to a particular user. So what Susie can do is go in and say, I'm entering data on behalf of Bob. And so these are Bob's observations, and then these are Mary's observations. And so they're all separate.
Yeah. So we do, or we may likely have volunteers that aren't super tech savvy. And we were thinking of utilizing data sheets for them. And so is that the type of thing would we then create an account for them in with their name and information and email or whatever, like if they have email? I guess I'm thinking of a few people that definitely don't have smartphones.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, you do still need to have them create an account. You could do it for them, but you do need an email. So it would be their email. You don't have to enter any other personal information. And then you create a password. That's basically like, that's the least amount of information you can put in as an account creator. And then you would use that email to, enter data on behalf of that person.
Okay.
But they wouldn't really have to do anything else. when you would sign up or create an account for them, you would be checking the box for your local phonology program. So it wouldn't ever prompt you to do anything in the observation deck. It would just automatically make them a group member. If you don't select a partner group in the registration process, there's a tutorial kind of thing where it walks you through creating a site, a personal site, but it would skip all that if they're part of a local phonology program.
And then if people aren't selected as either an admin or a data entry technician, they can just enter data as themselves.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can find what it looks like if you are a group member but not an administrator. I think I have a couple on here. Yeah, so this one, I'm not an administrator for this this local phonology program. So these are grayed out. I can still print data sheets. I can still see all this information, and then I can enter data and see my own data, but I can't do anything here. There's no manage users link. Okay.
That's
Any other-
weird because mine has managed users, but not the edit site is grayed out.
Really? That I've never seen
Just
that.
to make it interesting.
Okay, we'll look into yours specifically. Hopefully no one else has that problem. I don't know why that would be. It's really weird. Okay.
Can you remind me, Erin, is there a record retention timeline for paper data sheets, or like once it's in, you're, as far as you guys are concerned, it's good?
What do you mean by the record retention?
So like if we have an observer that's taking their observations using a paper data sheet, and then that gets entered. So I'm coming from the perspective of working for the state. So we have a specific amount of time we're supposed to hold on to records.
Oh, the paper copies?
The paper copy, yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't, it would be up to you on that. We don't have requirements. Yeah, as far as we're concerned, if the data are in there, then that's good. All right. So a couple other things here under the downloads column here. So sometimes if you are, especially working in, this is another link that I'll show you. So under the Phonology Program Resources, let me open that in a new tab here. We have a special dashboard that you might have seen, especially if you're in the course. Let me find it here. Oh, right here, under Use and Share Data, the Local Phenology Program Dashboard. So this is a way to get information about your observation activity within your local phonology program. So this is manually updated every 2 weeks, so it won't have the most current data. We're trying to get this into a better system, but we have to use, we're using Tableau, which is a great program, but it's not perfect and we have to do it manually. But basically what you get on this page is information about the number of records you've collected at your different sites, how many species you're collecting data on, what are the different phenophase categories and which ones are do you have the most data from. The site visits, which can be useful for seeing like if there are certain months where you might have had like a drop off in activity that you might want to correct the next year. And then down here, this is actually, it's technically a separate dashboard. So if you change this drop down to your own local phonology program up here, so you would uncheck the default is Audubon, California, because they have some beautiful data. And then you would type in your own here, select another one. Then you have to do the same thing again down here. Unfortunately, they're not linked. So just know that you have to do that all again here. So this dashboard is about your observer activity. So this can be useful in seeing how many active observers you have by month. And then you can also change, we only keep 2 years because there's a lot of data and we can't store more than that on here. If you were interested in previous years, you probably aren't here, but maybe anyone else who's listening to the recording is interested in like previous years before 2020. We can help you access that information, but we don't have it on here. But the reason why I wanted to show this today is you can see this person ID here. That is actually the observer ID for your different group members. So this can be really useful if you want to see people who are just doing an amazing job of collecting a ton of records. You might want to acknowledge them in some way, or I don't know, maybe even make them like a mentor for someone who's new. So this is a way to, you can see who these people are by hovering over the different lines to see the observed by person ID. Or maybe if there's someone who was like observing a lot at the beginning of the year and then dropped off, maybe you want to follow up with them. But the person ID, because this is public facing, it doesn't give you any personal information about who that person is. So I wanted to show you that because that's what the group roster does, is it links up that person ID with the user information. And then the other stuff on here is another way to see the total records contributed. So it shows you just kind of the order of how many observations different observers have made. I should also mention there's one other dashboard. It wouldn't fit on this page, so it's linked at the bottom, but this one is also useful because it will show you your newly registered observers. So this can be useful to see the impact of a training that you might have done. So you can see, you know, if you did a training, I think you can click on, oh, this is right. Maybe not. Oh, it used to be that you could see the months, but maybe that got turned off. But anyway, you can see how many people have registered in each year. I can see if I can get the months back. We used to be able to see by month the same information. So I'll see if I can get that back. Okay, so let's go back over to the observation deck. So the group roster, it'll give you, if you click on it, a file that will link up the observer ID, which is the same as the person ID. That's just what it's called in the Tableau. The person ID is the first column here, and then you can see the username, and then if they've entered their name on here. So it's not their email, unfortunately. We could probably add that if that would be preferable, but this is just a way to see who that person is. It also has their registration date, kind of the same information that you see when you click on their name in the column that's on the manage users page. And you can also see the badges that they've earned as well, in case that's helpful. Yeah.
Is there a way, when you were showing the dashboards that had the observations by user, I know that that one's public facing, but is there a way that you can link the user ID number to that, or do you have to download the roster and then manually refer to the number on the roster and then the number on the site?
So are you asking if you're on this page or the one that was before this?
Yeah, if you go up.
Like to one of these?
Yeah, that one. So you've got the person ID there on the right.
Yeah.
And then I want to know, like, okay, you know, 30607 is doing a spectacular job. I want to give them some a sticker. Is there a way for me to conveniently click on that and access their email or anything, or do I have to look up 30607 in my roster and figure out who that is?
Yeah, you have to do it that way because this is public facing, so we can't have like just anyone find the email or the username. Right. So yeah, I guess it probably would be better if the roster had both the email and the username. So I can see if we can add that. But you can also, if you only have a few people, you could just click on them individually and then see their number. So you could look for that 30 number here. Or you can download the group roster and hopefully that tells you if you know the username, if it's something that's associated with them, their name or their email, hopefully that would be a cue.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And then another link on here is the group data. So this is also an Excel file, and this will give you all of the data for your local phonology program. So it's just kind of a quick link to get there. You can also get it through our Phonology observation portal, which is the big kind of data download tool that we have on the website. But this is just a way to get only your group's data. If you wanted to get even more or like filter it further, maybe you're only interested in 1 year. If you have a ton of data, this will be a really big file. And this tells you what this is, that when you go there, your data will be selected. But if you click on that link, this takes you into the Phonology observation portal, which is also linked from the USA-NPN website. But it's just a way to have more of a filtered data set. And if you're interested in all these different data types, you can just click on the button and it'll tell you what it is. This is going to be the same data type that you get from this link here, which is called the status and intensity data. So that's where each row in the data file is going to be a yes or no answer to one of the questions on the data sheet. If you want something that's more summarized, we actually have, so by individual plant, this will actually give you, instead of a row being a yes or no answer to like breaking leaf buds, it will be for the whole year, when did breaking leaf buds start? When did it end? And give you those dates. It'll also give you a lot more information about like, how many days were there between the first yes that you reported and the previous last no. So it gives you kind of the a measure of precision of when that phase started happening. So how many days didn't you look, so it was like between the last yes and that, or the last no and that first yes. And then the site phenometrics, actually, if you have multiple individuals of the same species at a site, it'll average them together and give you one measure. So it'll say, like if you had 3 red maples at a site, it'll give you the average first yes and the average last yes. And then the magnitude phenometrics is kind of summarized even further. This is probably less useful for an individual local phonology program. It's more useful for looking at over like a state or a region. What's the magnitude or when is the peak happening for different phases? So you might use this to see like over the whole state of Vermont, when did people say yes, the highest proportion of yeses for open flowers in a year? So it'll tell you like it was 80% of the people that were reporting on red maple said yes to open flowers on this date or in this window of time. And that's actually what's behind the activity curves, if you've seen those in the visualization tool. So this is all, it's a lot of information, but if you come back here, you can just kind of read through and get a sense of what each of these are. And then you can walk through and select your date range if you want, and narrow down the years. I have to do that for the data type that I picked, but if I go to status and intensity, you don't have to pick a date range there, but you can. And then you can narrow down locations, either by the state or the region, drawing a bounding box. You could pick just certain species. It already has your, and phenotypes as well. It has your partner group selected by default. You can see that over here. If you click on the little eye to see what your filters are, you can see that I have NCO on here because I came to this tool from my manage users page. And then this stuff isn't super relevant. It's a lot of in the metadata. That's like where that the information, like the site descriptions that you put when you edited your site, and added information about your plants and animals and stuff is all in there. So you might never have to use this page. You could definitely just use our visualization tools to get a sense of what your data look like. But if you ever needed to do more of an analysis of your data, or if you wanted to be able to summarize like how many observations have I reported for different species, you can get some of that from this dashboard. But if you wanted the raw numbers in a file, this would be the place to get that. Any questions about that?
Would you just demonstrate again how you got to the portal?
Yeah, so it's just this here. So the group data link is just a file that downloads automatically with all your group data. If you want to filter, then you go here into the download filter data and you get into the portal. And then this link here is a link into the visualization tool. And so I don't know, are any of you familiar with the bigger visualization tool that we have? We won't have the chance to go through it today, but we do have a recording on the landing page for the Viz tool, and I think we've done it in a previous monthly call. And those are all their video recordings on the YouTube channel and the landing page for the community of practice. But this takes you into the Viz tool, and it also sets a filter for your data for your local phonology program. So once you get in here, you do have to pick one of the types, but once you do, you can see here that my group NCO is on here. So I'm only going to look at data from my group. And then this is a link that just gets you into, I think it does, into this Local Phenology Program Dashboard, the one we were just looking at earlier. So it's kind of like a quick link if you don't want to go through the resources menu and all that. It's just trying to make it easy to get all the information right there. So that is what's on the manage users page. So it's a lot, but any questions about that? All right. So let's go through just the last few things that are on the bottom here of the observation deck. So if you need to add or edit plants or animals, you would use these links here. So let's say you had a plant that was misidentified. It kind of depends first on whether you've entered data. And so let's say that you realized, it's funny that this name is Cottonwood actually. That might have been someone realizing what it was. Oh, I see. Okay, so this is actually, yeah, this is something that should have been changed. I don't think we ever entered data on this. This was like a retreat that we did as a staff. But yeah, you wouldn't want to do this. This is bad. You would want to contact us to have this changed. So if you, let's say that you had added an aspen here, the Populus tremuloides, you realize, oh, it's actually a cottonwood, then you could say delete, and then this gives you more information about the process. So if you say data entry error, I think, let's see what happens when I say this. It should delete it, and then it won't appear on your observation deck anymore. If you had entered data, it should come up with a message that says it has information about contacting us, because what we want to do is, if you've entered data for a species that's not correct, if it's something that we have on our list, then we want to see if we can change that and move the data. So if it was actually a cottonwood, we do have cottonwood. So we'll ask you about whether you want us to change that species in the database to the right species. It didn't show up for that because I didn't have any data on there, but that's what would happen if you actually had data. It's kind of like a check to make sure, because we don't want to lose any data that have been collected. You know, we want to make them the right species if we can. But if you say like, no, I'm not interested in observing cottonwood, then we'll just remove it from the database. If you have a species where, or a plant where the plant has died, then you would go here to dead, and then it'll ask you if you know the reason why it died. And then what happens then is it's removed from your observation deck, so you don't see it anymore. But it keeps the data in the database, because it's not like the data were collected in error. It's just something that is not going to be observed anymore. So we hide it, but it's still in the database. So questions about that?
I guess just clarifying, Erin, so if I, for instance, have some Norway maples that I don't want, but I do think we've collected data on them early on in the spring, it would just end up saying that I had to contact you to delete them from the system.
Yeah, or you can just send me an email about it too, and I can put in a ticket to see if we can change it. I don't know if the Norway maple is something we have on
I
our
don't
list.
remember either. Yeah, I'm not sure. So I'll double check, because I think when you had sent me an email with the directions to do it, and I might have gotten that pop-up thing and then forgot to do
Yeah. Yeah,
okay, I'll go back in and check.
Yeah, and this, if you click on the more details about this option, I think it also has some, this is like a flow chart, and it tells you kind of. Okay, so data entry error it's misidentified species asks us to contact. If data entry error, that might be, I don't know what that case would be. You just totally entered the wrong information. But that will take it out of the database. So this is linked from, if you click on this box, see more details. That's how I got there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but you can also just email me, because I'll get the email anyway. All right. So I think that's probably everything. One thing that sometimes, especially if you have people who are doing this that maybe get confused when they add a new plant, sometimes it can be a little glitchy with this. So if you started typing, let's see, actually, we do have Norway maple. So if you start typing, it'll kind of like load, and sometimes it's a little slow. So I usually recommend like type in the first couple letters and then wait a moment and let it load a little bit, because I've had people get frustrated when they start typing and then they click really quick, and then it adds something that they didn't want. So just to kind of prevent that, let's just kind of give it a minute and go slowly on that.
So
Yeah.
since it is in the, since Norwayable is in the database, would you want us to collect data on it? I mean, is
I
that?
Well, it's kind of up to you. If we can, because you've collected data already, we can definitely change it to the correct species for you in the database. And then if you don't want to observe it anymore, we can hide it. And so your data will be maintained, but you don't have to look at it anymore if you're not going to observe going forward. But if it's something you want to observe, we can keep it. But I think if you aren't interested, if you actually want to do something else, then we can hide it.
Okay, I'll think about what the best option is. Thanks.
Okay. And then we do have metadata for the individual plants as well. So yeah, you're welcome to add any of these things about your plants. Another thing that sometimes is missed is you can add an image. People always ask like, oh, can I add a bunch of pictures of, you know, when I go out to observe? And we don't have the capacity to store that much data in the form of photos, but you can add one picture for each individual plant. And this does also show up on the app. So sometimes this can be helpful if you want to kind of help your observers find an individual tree or something. You can put in a picture. I've also had people use this to put in a little map. So it'll show them like the X marks the plant that they're looking for. And that's kind of like a workaround. You could even upload, like you can put a text box if you want, and then save it as an image and upload it if you want to like give someone notes on how to find something. And that's visible in the app. And then this other stuff is just, you know, more information to kind of help data end users know what's the situation for this plant that might impact the phenology. Any questions on this?
Is it pretty straightforward to change out the photo?
That's a good question. I think so. I think when you add it, it'll give you a new button that says remove, and then you can do it again if you need to.
Are the comments also available in the app?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I'd have to double check that. It probably would be helpful if they were. So we might actually have a ticket about that in our system to do that, but yeah, I'll check on that, but that's a good question. Okay, I just want to get to one more thing before we finish up. So these, I'm not going to go through these things. You know, this is a link to each of the profile pages, and that basically has all the questions on the data sheet and the descriptions, everything that's also on the data sheets and in the app as well. I guess I will mention this. So with the printing of the data sheets, oh, that actually just printed this one. Sorry, I was looking for this link. So this will give you a few different options for printing data sheets, which might be helpful for you. So the cover sheet is going to be information about like how long did you spend observing? It's especially of use if you're observing animals. It'll ask you like, how long did you spend looking for animals? It also asks about snow cover, and I think that's it. But there's a couple different ways to download the data sheet. So if you were doing, let's say like a event where you wanted to print out data sheets and have like one observation for each of all the different individual plants at your site, you can print out this day by day, and that'll give you like one sheet with one observation spot for all the individual plants. So like if you had 5 different species, it'll give you one of each. So someone could just take a single data sheet out. The species by species will give you like basically 10 columns of the same individual plant, which is kind of the typical data sheet. So like red maple, it would give you 10 dates worth. So that's nice if you have someone that's going out regularly. So they can just like take that out over and over. And then when it's full, or maybe they do it, you know, there's a little box that says entered online. They could do it every couple weeks, once a month, whatever they want to do, or every week if they want to. But those are the 2 options. And then the phenophase definition sheet, you probably have seen, that's the description where it says, you'll know it's a breaking leaf bud because this, and it'll give you a lot of details about that, especially for things like ripe fruits. We have species specific definitions that'll tell you what it looks like when it's ripe. So make sure you you know about this and you download that if people are going out, especially when they're learning the species, to know what to look for. And that's also on the app. There's when it asks you the questions like, do you see breaking leaf buds? There's a little eye, and if you tap the eye, it'll give you the definition. All right. Oh, and I think probably this, not sure what to print, that might have more information about what I just said. Oh yeah. So it'll give you the different types of data sheets and all that stuff. All right, so the last thing, I know we are almost running out of time. Oh, that's weird. I don't know why it just did that. It looks different when I went backwards. Refresh. Okay, I don't know what was going on there. So that was very strange. That's a weird glitch. So a couple of these links disappeared for a second there, but now they're back. So if you go to this enter observation data, this is where someone who's collecting data on paper data sheets, that's where they'll go to transcribe their data. So this is where I wanted to show you what it looks like if someone is a data entry technician, and I am for this group, so that's good. So at the top, regardless of whether the person is a data entry technician, you'll be able to change between your different sites and enter data for different sites. But you can also change and say, select the user that collected this data in the field. So if I was entering data for Emma, I would click on Emma's name, and now I'm entering data as if I was Emma. So this is where you'd have everyone who's a group member, and if there are some of those people that don't want to do this part, you can have someone else do it for them. You can also, if you had a data entry technician who needed to go back and edit someone's, maybe they entered something incorrectly, so you could tell them, okay, go into this email and then correct the data that was collected on this date, and so they could go back in time, look for that date, and then edit the data. And then once you say you can edit whatever's there and submit, and that'll fix it in the database. Question? Or should look at the chat too.
Yeah, so for when you have a data entry technician enter something for, say maybe somebody like forgot their phone and so they use their backup paper data sheet. So they're not a regular paper data sheet user, so they're not having their data regularly entered. And then so a data technician observer enters their data for them. Is there any way to indicate that the data was entered by the data technician observer and not the actual observer, so that if there's questions about the data, you know who to go to?
Yeah, let's see. I think that is in the database. I'll have to double check on that, but I think we have a column that says entered by. Let me see actually if that is. So let me see. Observed by. I don't know that we do actually. We haven't updated by. Maybe that's where it goes. I feel like if
it looks like there's a submitted by.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's it. Okay, and maybe this is okay. Yes, thank you for asking this. This is good because I'm clarifying what I know about this too. So this is so say I'm entering data for Emma. It's going to show Emma as the observed by. It's going to show me as a submitted by. And if it was someone's data that I edited, so it was actually like entered by or submitted by someone else, like say Emma submitted something 3 weeks ago, but I went in and edited it, it'll say updated by me. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And you'd have to, if you want to get that information in your file, you'd want to collect or check all those boxes to see that. Any other questions on this screen? Okay, so I think we got through everything on the bottom here. The other links that are down here are to download your data. This is another Excel file, but it's going to be just for me, for my data. And then this is another link into the Viz tool and it's going to show, it's going to be filtered for me as an observer instead of like the other link we found from the manage users page was filtering for our local phonology program, but this one's just for my data. So if your observer, if they have a question about, I want to see just my data and I want to have more options than just the stuff that's on this tool here, you can point them here and they can just see their data. Yeah, so let me just make sure, I know there was some other stuff in the chat, so I'm gonna make sure I answered all the questions. I'm not sure, Elizabeth, you had a question about right-clicking and opening the tab.
Oh yeah, so on the manage users page, I had trouble finding the portal because I was right-clicking to open it in a new tab, and it just reopens the manage users page.
Oh,
but if you just
okay.
if you just regularly click on it, it opens it automatically into a new window. So
Okay,
thank you
yeah.
for having that good on the back end.
Yeah,
It
I think
opens in a
it's
new window.
so this whole system is it's a Java app, so it's like a different type of thing. So yeah, the links get kind of weird, but yeah, you could just click on them like regular and it'll open them as a new tab. Okay, I think we got to all the questions then. Anything else before we wrap up? So I know that's a lot that's on here, but we do try to include the little help buttons and stuff and descriptions. So hopefully that'll help. And you can always go back and review this, or feel free to reach out with any questions about any of this stuff. But thanks for all the great questions. You guys helped me learn some stuff too about what's on here and how to find different things. So thank you for that. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I always ask if there's a topic that you guys would like for the next monthly call. I don't think we have anything yet for September. So is there anything you'd like to go over? Feel free to email if you think of something. All right, well, thanks so much for coming.
Yes, thank you. This was great.
Awesome.
Thanks again, Erin.
Yeah, you too. All right, have a great
Nice to meet
weekend.
everybody. Thanks, you too.
Bye, Heidi.
Bye, Elizabeth. Good to see you. Nice to meet you and
Yeah,
Erin.
you too.
Person.
Bye.
Sort of.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.